Hi, well, we're getting almost close to finishing up our front and back bodice blocks. The first thing that we need to do is that we need to merge the back into the front or vice versa so that you have both the bodice front and the bodice back in the same file if you haven't already done so. So you see that I have my bodice front and I have my bodice back in the work area. And what we're first going to do is that we're going to create our darts. You see that we have areas here for our darts. We have a line for our shoulder dart. So we want to actually create the dart so we can then be able to move and rotate it later on. So the first thing that we're going to do is that we're going to select the bottom of our waist dart, and we're going to then go ahead and click on darts, then create dart. Then it's asking for both the name, so it's a waist dart, and it's asking for the depth. And if you look at the book is saying that the depth needs to be 5/8 of an inch. That's 5/8 minus what our draft lines were. So if I get my calculator here and I type in the 7.328 minus 0.625, which is 5/8, then I'm going to get 6.703. I'm going to round that to 6.7. So I'm going to click on the depth and put that 6.7 being the dart depth. Now I do want to pay attention to the overlap direction, and I do want the overlap checked. So the front dart should be towards the center. And there I have my front waist dart. I'm going to do the same for the back, is to select my points, and I go into dart, create dart. This one is supposed to be the length of my cutting lines here, so I'm going to go ahead and put in 7.75. And again, I want to pay attention to my overlap. The overlap needs to again go towards the center front or center back. So here's my center back, and I go ahead and I click on OK. So there I get my center back. Then I want to select my shoulder dart here, so I'm going to go ahead and zoom in. We just had a line, so I'm going to again select in a clockwise fashion, select those points up here near the shoulder. Go ahead, dart, create dart. This dart here should be 3 inches. This is my shoulder dart. I'm going to label as such. And then you will notice that, see, the arrows or the little X's here are not the same direction as my line. So we will need to fix that after we create our dart. So I go ahead and I click on OK. Now what I need to do then is that I need to take the dart tip and move it in the angle of my line. So I'm going to head and select my dart tip, and I'm going to go to dart, then rotate dart to point, and select where my number 2 is, make my edges average, and click on OK. Then what I can do is that I can now get rid of that draft line there. I don't need to have that anymore. So there I have my darts in my pieces. Now the next thing that I want to do is that I want to check and make sure all edges that are sewn together are the correct length. So the 2 edges that are going to be sewn are my shoulder seam and my side seam. Doesn't matter which you check first, but you need to check both of those. So the first thing that I'm going to do, just as a double check, is that I am going to use the walk tool, and I want to go to walk options. When I go to walk options, I want to make sure that it has skip darts right here. And I want to just click on OK. And the rest of this is fine. So now I want to put my two pieces together as if I were sewing them. So I need to flip over my back here. So I'm going to flip that direction. And the walk tool is a little on the tricky side, that sometimes it does help to zoom in so that you know what points that you're selecting. And you're going to start by selecting the point of the pattern piece that you want to move. So I want to select my walk, and I'm going to select the point which I want to move to the point that I want to match. Now here's the tricky part. You don't want to select the point that you're moving or the pattern piece that you're moving. You want to select the piece that you're moving it to. And I click, and then I'm going to click beyond the dart. So I click and I click beyond the dart, and you see that it shifted, and that means that it was as if the shoulder dart had been sewn, and so it moved it and it shifted. When it shifts, that these two armhole lines should line up. So I want to go to my select tool. You notice that they're not lining up here. And I'm going to move in real close. And I want to then just use move point. Select my point there. And then I want to smooth this out. And I just want to make sure that that is a nice smooth curve when I get this in shape. And if you would like to use the French curve, you can. Now I see that I'm a bit off at an angle, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add another point. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move point. Then while I'm here, I also want to make this point 90 degrees. So between the shoulder and the beginning of my curve for my armhole needs to be 90 degrees for both the front and the back. So I'm going to move them apart just slightly. I'm going to click on my point. It doesn't matter if I pick the back or the front. Click on that corner point and then select info. And when I select info, I see that I have 93.8 degrees. So I want to get actually as close as I can to 90 degrees. Now, to do this, just add a point near the corner. And I can do one of two things. I don't want that to be a grading point. Grading points are at the corner. I can eyeball it, or I can align points. So I can select in a clockwise direction. I can try align points and see if align points will work. But because this is on an angle, I need to know what angle these 2 points actually are. So if that's too hard to figure out the angle there, you can actually just eyeball it. And if you move up real close, you can see that we want these 2 points to be in a line. And so I can then just line them up by just eyeballing whether they are. I then go back to my corner point, select info, still at 92. So I need to move point again. And I'm getting 90.7, which is good. And so I'm not exactly 90 degrees, but that's fine. So I want to make sure that that's 90 degrees. Now I need to adjust my second point here. And so I'm just going to select move point, and that gives me that nice little curve there. So I do want to kind of fuss at my corners here. And so I can then click on my other piece here. I can do the same thing so that I move my point. Again, it's only about 1/4 of an inch in from the corner. And just want to make sure that they're about aligned. I'm going to select my corner point again and info 90.2. That's almost right on there. And so now I just want to smooth out this line here. And I'm going to go ahead and just move point and move this, which is good because this line is supposed to be on my balance line, which is actually showing that it is good. And so anytime I have like just a little extra point, I can take off that point, or I might even just delete points so that it's nice and smooth. And you just want to back up, see that it's nice and smooth in there, and take out any lumps. So that's my shoulder. Then the next one that I want to do is I want to make sure that the side seam is even. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to rotate my back back to the original grain line here, and then I'm going to flip it, and then I'm going to flip it again so that it's as if I were to sew my two side seams. So if I'm here to zoom in real close here, I see that one of my side seams is 8.625, the other one's 8.355. So again, I'm going to take my calculator, or I can walk it, but I can do the 8.625 minus the 8.355. I get 0.295. I can either make it longer or shorter. I'm going to err on the side of making it a little bit longer. I find that the bodice tends to be a little bit on the short side. Oops. There we go. And then these two side seams will be the same length. Now I want to do the same thing to my points for my armhole. I want to click on the grade point. I want to check on info. I want to make sure that that is a 90-degree point. Looks like I have 2 points right on top of each other here. And so I want to get rid of that little point. There we go. Okay, so I want to, you always just want to have 1 point. So it says that it's 81, so it's quite a bit off here. And so I want to then go ahead and I want to move this point down. So again, I can eyeball it so that these 2 points are in line with each other. And now I can select that point, select info, and 91, so it just needs to be just a little bit less here. Again, when they're on angles, there isn't an easy way to just type in the amount. If they're just right in line with each other. It looks like I made it a little worse. Okay. That you want to be, again, as close as you possibly can. And then again, I want to do the same with my front. I can see that that's quite a bit off here. So again, I want to move my points so that they are, again, 90 degrees. And one thing that will help is to make sure that this point is not a curve point. I can see that it was trying to curve right here. So we're talking about our side seam to where our edge of our armhole is. And again, eyeball that and make sure that these two lines are, again, 90 degrees. And so you want to, again, click on the point, click on info, and you want to adjust, and go ahead and click on apply, and then just again try to make sure that you're moving that point. And again, sometimes it's just easier to eyeball that. It's fine if, again, that is 90 degrees. As you back up, you will see that these are 90 degrees, are very close to a 90-degree angle. The same for the side seams and the center front, that I want to make sure, and the neck. I want to make sure that those are also 90 degrees. So I just want to double check. This front here has a curve to it, so I need to add a point about 1/4 of an inch away. And here, because this is a vertical line, it's a little bit easier. I can do point, I can do align points, and I can select vertical. So when I do that and then I select my center front here, then I'll see that it's exactly 90 degrees. So a point that is a perpendicular line is easier to get right on the money, if you will, rather than those that are on an angle. And so the same here with my center front. I want to zoom in close to that. I want to add a point, and I want to select my points. I want to go point, align points, make that vertical, and then as you see, when I select my center front here, it's going to be 90 degrees. So again, anywhere that you don't have an angle, you have a perpendicular line, you can just align points and you can make those 90 degrees. So you want to make sure that all of your corners, again, are 90 degrees from each other. So that includes the center front at the neck, the shoulder seams. So it is the shoulder seam with the neck. Remember, it's not 90 degrees from the screen, but from the pattern piece. The armhole, the side seam right at the edge of the side seam, and then at your center front. And so just placing a little point can do that. Now, you may have this other little line here that is in the back, and then to get rid of that, you would need to trace your segments again to make sure that you are getting the curve. And so you would have your complete pattern piece without that little bit of a neck there, neckline. And there I've got my new piece. Then I can move this draft off the work area there. All right, so then my last thing is to do my seam allowances. So again, I haven't corrected all of my points here, but you will want to. And then for my seam allowances, I want to click on seam, click on my point here, select 0.5 and apply it. And go ahead and close. And I want to do that to the back as well. Now, the neck edge for the front and the back is supposed to be 1/4 of an inch. So we've added a 1/2 inch all the way around. I'm going to select the neck, go back in here and select the neck, go select my seam allowance. You notice that it comes out of 0.5, so I'm going to select 0.25 and then close it, and then do that for the front. So it's easier just to select 0.5 for everything, then go back into the neck area that you need to change to be smaller. So that's just convention to have that neck area be smaller. You want to double check your pieces to make sure that you have paired pieces and that you have labeled it correctly. And the description of this would be your bodice block. And the material should be self. You want to make sure that the text size is 1/4. So we should have 2. We should have an opposite piece. It should be 2-way. And apply and close. You want to do your front. You want to make sure that you have your bodice front, and or just call it the front actually. Sorry. Be consistent with my back. And I want to click on there and again apply and close, and this is on the 1/2, and so there should only be 1. And then I want to switch to cut, and I can arrange my work area, pieces in the work area. I can scatter those pieces so that I can see that I have all of my pieces. I should actually open up my pieces first, and I have my front and my back, and then I'm done. Go ahead and leave your shoulder balance here. This is your balance line, and so go ahead and leave those in on your draft. Then you're ready to print, or plot I should say, and you want to plot them at full scale, and then you're ready to sew up your darts and sew the front and the back together. Remember when you are sewing that you want to leave a side seam or a back open so that you're able to get in the front and the back bodice. Now one last thing too is that you can just check the sleeve drop on the bodice just to make sure that it is not too short. So what I frequently do to just check that sleeve drop here is that I bring in 2 guidelines, be from the high point shoulder down to the bottom of the armhole, and then I can measure, and this one's coming up with 9.983, and you can check it on yourself. And so you can just double check to make sure that that is indeed a deep enough or armhole for you. If you find that it needs to be a little bit deeper, then you'll need to tweak this armhole a little bit, and by that I mean that you're going to take the armhole and you're actually going to drop it. So I'm going to come in close, and I'm going to select here my points. I see that I have a couple points in there that I need to get rid of, and I would then use the move proportional tool here to select from the center or from the underneath the armhole, and I just drop it a 1/2 inch. So again, you can check the sleeve depth or the armhole drop on the pattern and just check to make sure that it is indeed deep enough for you. You want to do the same amount on the front as in the back. And so I've gotten rid of some of my excess pieces. So I'm going to zoom in here on my front. I'm going to click on here and do my move proportional, selecting in a clockwise direction. And then just drop this a 1/2 inch. And so again, that's just to make the armhole a little bit deeper there. Make sure that the armhole touches the across chest. So that's another little tweak that you need to do. Get as close as you possibly can without distorting your armhole. But this needs to touch that across chest. Often people don't make their armholes deep enough, and so we want to just make sure that we have a nice smooth little curve there. And that's it. So you are ready to go. You want to switch all to cut, and then you are ready to plot out your pattern.